The cold winter air bit at the boy's face as he hunched his shoulders against the wind. Ravi was just 12 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of someone much older. 6 months had passed since his mother's death, and the streets of the busy city had become his unwelcome home. Every morning, Ravi would wake up in whatever shelter had taken him in for the night, or sometimes from the small hidden corner behind the bakery where the warm air vents kept the worst of the cold away. His routine never changed: collect whatever recyclables he could find in his tattered backpack and hope to make enough money for a small meal. This particular afternoon, dark clouds threatened rain as Ravi hurried to find shelter. His stomach growled painfully. He hadn't eaten since yesterday when a kind food vendor had given him leftover samosas. The first heavy raindrops began to fall as he spotted a store awning that offered protection from the coming downpour. Ravi rushed toward it, not noticing the tall man in an expensive suit walking in the same direction while talking urgently on his phone. They collided, sending Ravi stumbling backward. "I understand the consequences," the man was saying into his phone, barely acknowledging the collision with a distracted wave of his hand. "Without those contract papers, the entire deal falls apart. 300 jobs lost. I searched everywhere." The businessman, Mr. Patel, according to the name badge clipped to his coat, paced beneath the awning, his face lined with stress. He placed his leather messenger bag on a nearby bench as he continued his conversation, gesturing with his free hand. "Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keep the investors in the room somehow," he said before ending the call with a frustrated sigh. The rain suddenly intensified, and a gust of wind blew a newspaper across the sidewalk. Mr. Patel glanced at his watch, muttered something under his breath, and hurried away toward the line of taxis at the corner, leaving his messenger bag forgotten on the bench. Ravi noticed it immediately. His eyes widened as he looked from the expensive bag to the retreating figure of the businessman. He stepped toward it slowly, glancing around to see if anyone else had noticed. Nobody was paying attention in the downpour. The leather felt smooth under his fingers as he carefully opened the flap. Inside, he found a laptop, a wallet, and a folder bulging with important-looking papers, stamped PTEL Industrias in bold red letters. Ravi's heart raced. The items in this bag could feed him for months. The laptop alone was worth more money than he had seen since his mother got sick. For a brief moment, a war raged inside him. Survival instincts fought against the memory of his mother's voice. "Our integrity is the one thing nobody can take from us, Beta. When you have nothing else, you still have your character." Ravi closed the bag and looked in the direction Mr. Patel had gone. The right choice wasn't always the easy one. With a deep breath, he slung the bag over his shoulder and stepped out into the rain. He had to find the man and return what didn't belong to him, even if it meant going hungry another night. What Ravi didn't know was how this single decision would change the course of his life forever. The leather bag felt heavy on Ravi's thin shoulder as he stepped out into the rain. Each drop hit his face like tiny cold needles, but he barely noticed. His mind was focused on finding Mr. Patel before the important documents inside the bag were ruined by the weather. Ravi looked down the busy street where the businessman had disappeared. The row of taxis was still there, but Mr. Patel was nowhere to be seen. He must have already gotten into one and driven away. Ravi's heart sank a little, but he wasn't ready to give up. Opening the bag again under the protection of another shop awning, Ravi carefully looked through the contents for any clue about where to find the owner. Inside the folder with the red PATEL Industries stamp, he found papers with an address printed at the top. The office was in the business district, about 20 blocks away. 20 blocks felt like a journey to another city for his tired legs, but Ravi took a deep breath and started walking. The rain continued to pour, soaking through his thin jacket and worn shoes. People rushed past him with umbrellas and raincoats, too busy staying dry to notice the small boy clutching an expensive leather bag to his chest. "Hey kid, what are you doing with that?" A street vendor called out as Ravi passed by. The man eyed the expensive bag suspiciously. "I'm returning it to its owner," Ravi replied honestly. "He forgot it." The vendor laughed. "Sure you are. That bag could buy you food for a month." Ravi kept walking without responding. The temptation had already crossed his mind more than once. His stomach twisted with hunger, and his feet were beginning to ache. It would be so easy to sell the laptop inside. No one would know. No one would blame a hungry kid for choosing survival. But his mother's face appeared in his mind again. She had raised him alone after his father left, working 2 jobs until her illness made it impossible. Even when they had nothing, she never took what wasn't hers. The right path isn't measured by what you gain, she would say, but by who you become along the way. By the time Ravi reached the business district, the rain had eased to a light drizzle. Tall glass buildings surrounded him, their reflections creating a maze of light and shadow. People in suits walked purposefully, their shoes clicking on the wet pavement. None of them spared a glance for the soaking wet boy, who looked so out of place among them. Ravi stopped in front of the address on the paper, a towering building with PATL Industrias displayed in large letters above the entrance. His courage almost failed him as he approached the revolving doors. Would they even let someone like him inside? What if they thought he had stolen the bag? Taking a deep breath, Ravi pushed through the revolving door and entered a vast lobby with marble floors and soft lighting. A security guard at the desk immediately stood up. "Where do you think you're going?" the guard asked, his voice stern but not unkind. "I need to see Mr. Patel," Ravi said, trying to keep his voice from shaking. He left his bag, and there are important papers inside. He was talking about a deal and jobs being lost. The guard looked skeptical but noticed the expensive bag clutched in the boy's hands. It clearly didn't belong to a child from the streets. "Wait here," he said, picking up a phone. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and Mr. Patel himself rushed out, his face lined with worry. When he saw the bag in Ravi's hands, he stopped suddenly, his expression changing from stress to disbelief. "You found it," he said quietly, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You actually found it and brought it here." Ravi held out the bag. "You left it on the bench when it started raining. I tried to call out, but you were already gone." Mr. Patel took the bag with trembling hands and opened it, checking the contents. Everything was there. The contracts, the laptop, everything needed to save the deal and hundreds of jobs. He looked at the soaking wet boy standing before him, shivering slightly in his worn clothes. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Ravi," the boy answered, unaware that this moment would change his life forever. "Ravi," Mr. Patel repeated the name softly, looking at the boy with new interest. "You walked 20 blocks in the rain to return this bag?" Ravi nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious about his wet clothes dripping onto the polished marble floor. He tried to stand a little straighter despite his exhaustion. "I should go now," he said quietly, starting to back away. His mission was complete, and he didn't belong in this world of glass and marble. "Wait," Mr. Patel called. "Please wait." He turned to the security guard. "Kumar, can you bring some hot tea and something to eat from the cafeteria? And perhaps a towel?" The guard nodded and picked up the phone again, while Mr. Patel guided Ravi to a seating area in the corner of the lobby. The soft leather couch felt strange beneath Ravi. He couldn't remember the last time he'd sat on anything so comfortable. "Those papers you brought back," Mr. Patel explained, "they're going to save 300 families from losing their income. I was about to lose a deal that would have closed one of our factories." Ravi didn't fully understand business talk, but he understood what it meant to lose a job. Before his mother got sick, she had lost her position at the textile factory when it closed down. The memory of her face that day still hurt. Kumar returned with a tray holding a steaming cup of tea, a plate of biscuits and sandwiches. He also brought a clean towel, which he handed to Ravi with a small smile. The boy took it gratefully and dried his hair while Mr. Patel continued speaking. "I need to take these papers upstairs immediately for a meeting," he said, checking his watch. "But I want to talk with you more. Will you wait here for me? It won't take long, I promise." Ravi hesitated. He had learned to be cautious of kind offers that came with hidden costs. But something in Mr. Patel's eyes seemed genuine, and the warm food in front of him was impossible to resist. He nodded and reached for a sandwich. "Good. I'll be back soon," Mr. Patel said, picking up his bag and hurrying toward the elevator. As Ravi ate, he watched the busy lobby. People rushed in and out, talking on phones, carrying briefcases and coffee cups. It felt like watching a different world, one that had rules and rhythms he didn't understand. The sandwich tasted better than anything he could remember eating in months, and the hot tea warmed him from the inside out. Kumar, the security guard, kept glancing over at him but didn't approach again. Ravi could tell the man was curious about his story. Everyone probably wondered what a street kid was doing in the headquarters of Patel Industries. Nearly an hour passed before the elevator doors opened again, and Mr. Patel emerged, this time with a broad smile on his face. He walked quickly across the lobby. "The deal is saved," he announced as he sat down across from Ravi. "All because you chose to do the right thing when nobody was watching." Ravi shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Anyone would have done it." Mr. Patel shook his head. "No, Ravi, not everyone would. That bag contained my laptop, wallet, and important contracts. Most people would have seen an opportunity, not a responsibility." He leaned forward. "Where do you live? I'd like to speak with your parents to tell them what you did." The question made Ravi's chest tighten. He stared down at his hands, suddenly aware of the dirt under his fingernails. I don't really live anywhere right now. My mother died 6 months ago." "There's no one else." The words hung in the air between them. Ravi hadn't spoken about his mother to anyone since it happened. The shelters asked questions sometimes, but he usually found ways to avoid answering. Mr. Patel's expression changed, a mixture of shock and something else, something that wasn't pity but looked more like recognition. He was quiet for a long moment before he spoke again. "Ravi, I have a proposal for you," he said finally. "But first, I'd like to know more about you, your story. Will you tell me?" Outside, the rain had stopped completely, and weak sunlight was breaking through the clouds. Ravi didn't know it yet, but the darkness in his life was about to lift in the same way. Ravi hesitated before sharing his story. He wasn't used to adults wanting to hear about his life, but something about Mr. Patel's kind eyes made him feel safe enough to speak. "My mother was a seamstress," Ravi began slowly. "She made beautiful clothes, sometimes working through the night to finish orders. After my father left, it was just us two." He paused, the memories flooding back. "Everything was okay until she got sick. Cancer, the doctors said." Mr. Patel nodded silently, letting Ravi continue at his own pace. "We sold everything to pay for her treatment. Our small house, her sewing machine, even my school books. But it wasn't enough." Ravi's voice grew quieter. "She made me promise to keep studying, to make something of myself. But after she was gone, there was nowhere for me to go." "No other family?" Mr. Patel asked gently. Ravi shook his head. "There's an uncle in another city, but he has 5 children of his own. He couldn't take me in." "So you've been on the streets for 6 months," Mr. Patel said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. His eyes showed deep concern. "Where do you sleep? How do you eat?" "I stay at the shelter when there's room," Ravi explained. "Otherwise, I find quiet spots where no one notices me. I collect bottles and cans to sell for recycling. Sometimes people give me leftover food." Mr. Patel looked troubled by these words. He glanced at his watch and then back at Ravi, seeming to make a decision. "I need to make a phone call," he said. "Will you wait a little longer?" Ravi nodded, though he was beginning to wonder what would happen next. He watched as Mr. Patel walked to a quiet corner of the lobby and made a call, speaking in hushed tones with frequent glances back at Ravi. After finishing the call, Mr. Patel returned with a smile. "My wife agrees with me," he said simply. "We would like to help you, Ravi." "I don't eat charity," Ravi said quickly, his pride making him sit up straighter. "This isn't charity," Mr. Patel replied firmly. "This is an opportunity. My wife and I have been talking for years about fostering a child, but the timing never seemed right." He leaned forward. "Today, when I nearly lost everything because of misplaced papers, you reminded me what truly matters. Character, integrity, doing what's right when no one is watching." Ravi stared at him, trying to understand what was being offered. "We have a spare room in our home," Mr. Patel continued. "It's yours if you want it. You could go back to school, have regular meals, clean clothes. A chance at the future your mother wanted for you." The offer seemed impossible, like something from a dream or a movie. Ravi had learned to be suspicious of things that sounded too good to be true. "Why would you do this for me?" he asked. "You don't even know me." Mr. Patel smiled gently. "Sometimes you learn everything you need to know about a person from a single action. When you found my bag, you could have taken what was inside. No one would have blamed you. But you chose differently." He paused. "Besides, I know what it's like to struggle. I wasn't born wealthy, Ravi." My parents worked in a factory, just like your mother. Someone gave me a chance once. Now it's my turn to do the same. Ravi felt tears forming but blinked them away. He hadn't cried since his mother's funeral, not even on the coldest nights or hungriest days. What if it doesn't work out? He asked, voicing his deepest fear. Then we'll figure something else out, Mr. Patel said simply. But I think it will. My wife is already preparing the room, and I've spoken to a friend who runs a good school nearby. They'll have a placement for you next week. The security guard, Kumar, had been watching from a distance. He approached with a small smile. Sir, your car has arrived, he informed Mr. Patel, then turned to Ravi. Good luck, young man. I think your life is about to change. Ravi looked between the two men, feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Slowly, he nodded his acceptance. I'd like to try, he said quietly. The sleek black car glided through the evening traffic, a world away from the crowded buses Ravi occasionally sneaked onto when it rained too hard to walk. He sat quietly in the back seat beside Mr. Patel, watching the city transform from the business district to residential areas with larger homes and tree-lined streets. My wife's name is Priya, Mr. Patel said, breaking the silence. She's a doctor, a pediatrician who works with children. When I called her about you, she immediately started preparing. Ravi nodded, his hands folded tightly in his lap. Despite Mr. Patel's kindness, nervousness crept through him as they drove farther from the familiar streets where he had survived these past months. Will she like me? He asked in a small voice before he could stop himself. Mr. Patel smiled warmly. She already does. Priya has a way of seeing the good in people, just like you saw the right thing to do with my bag. The car turned into a driveway leading to a large house with warm lights glowing from several windows. It wasn't as massive as Ravi had imagined a rich businessman's home might be, but it was certainly bigger than anywhere he'd ever lived. Flowers lined the pathway to the front door, which opened before they reached it. A woman with kind eyes and a welcoming smile stood there. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a light blue sweater, not the fancy dress Ravi had expected. When she saw him, her smile grew even warmer. You must be Ravi, she said, her voice gentle. I'm Priya. You've had quite a day, haven't you? Ravi nodded, suddenly feeling very small and out of place. His clothes were still damp from the rain, and he knew he didn't look like he belonged in such a clean, beautiful home. Come inside, Priya urged. You must be hungry. I've made dinner, and then we can show you your room. The inside of the house smelled of spices and cooking that reminded Ravi painfully of his mother. He followed them through a living room with comfortable-looking sofas to a kitchen where dishes of food sat on the table. It's nothing fancy, Priya said, just some homemade dal, rice, and vegetable curry. I hope you like it. The food was unlike anything Ravi had eaten in months. He tried to eat slowly and politely, but hunger got the better of him. No one commented when he took seconds, then thirds. Priya simply kept refilling his plate with a pleased expression. As they ate, Mr. Patel explained to his wife about the important business deal that Ravi had helped save. The investors were ready to walk away, he said. When I showed up with the contracts, their faces changed completely. So Ravi is the hero of the day, Priya said with a smile, passing him another piece of naan bread. Ravi blushed, unused to praise. I just did what my mother taught me, he said quietly. After dinner, they showed him to a room that would be his. It had a real bed with fresh sheets, a desk by the window, and an empty bookshelf. A new toothbrush and other toiletries were laid out in the attached bathroom. We'll get you some clothes tomorrow, Priya said. For tonight, I've put out some old things that might fit you. They were my nephew's, but he outgrew them. When they left him alone, Ravi sat on the edge of the bed, hardly daring to believe this was real. He had gone from homeless to having a room of his own in a single day. Part of him worried it might be a dream, that he would wake up back in the shelter or behind the bakery. He walked to the window and looked out at the night sky, thinking of his mother. I'm trying to keep my promise, he whispered to the stars. I think you would like these people. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Priya entered with a glass of milk and a small framed photo. Raj, my husband, mentioned your mother, she said gently. I thought you might like to have this frame for a picture of her, if you have one. Ravi reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, creased photo, the only possession he had kept through everything. It showed his mother smiling in front of their old home, her eyes bright with life. She was beautiful, Priya said softly as Ravi carefully placed the photo in the frame. I think she would be very proud of you today. The first few days in the Patel home passed in a blur for Ravi. After months of survival on the streets, the comfort of a real bed, regular meals, and hot showers felt almost overwhelming. Each morning, he woke up expecting to find himself back in the shelter, only to be surprised by the soft mattress beneath him and sunlight streaming through actual curtains. On the third day, Priya took him shopping for clothes. Ravi had never owned more than 2 shirts and a pair of pants at once, so standing in a store with racks of options made him freeze with uncertainty. Just pick what you like, Priya encouraged gently, whatever feels comfortable. He settled on simple t-shirts and jeans, nothing fancy despite Priya's insistence that he could choose whatever he wanted. Old habits of caution were hard to break. When they added a school uniform to their purchases, reality finally began to sink in. He was really going to school again. Are you nervous about starting next week? Priya asked as they drove home, bags of new clothes in the back seat. Ravi nodded, staring out the window. What if I'm too far behind? It's been half a year since I've been in a classroom. That's why we've arranged for a tutor to come tomorrow, she explained. Just to help you catch up before classes start. Raj believes in you, and so do I. The tutor was a kind older man with thick glasses who quickly assessed what Ravi remembered and what he'd missed. To everyone's surprise, Ravi wasn't as far behind as they feared. Even during his months on the street, he'd sometimes sneak into the public library to read books, determined to keep his promise to his mother. The boy has a good mind, the tutor told the Patels after their third session. Very sharp. He just needs the chance to use it. One evening, about a week after Ravi had arrived, Raj invited him into his home office. Unlike the sleek business environment of Patel Industries, this room was cozy with bookshelves lining the walls and family photos on the desk. I wanted to show you something, Raj said, pulling an old photograph from a drawer. It showed a skinny boy about Ravi's age standing in front of a small, modest house with a tin roof. That's me, 30 years ago. Ravi looked between the photo and the successful businessman beside him, struggling to connect the two images. My father worked in a textile factory, Raj continued. We barely had enough to eat most days. When I was 15, one of my teachers noticed I was good with numbers. He convinced a local businessman to sponsor my education. He smiled at the memory. That man changed my life, not by giving me charity, but by giving me opportunity. Ravi listened intently, beginning to understand why Raj had reached out to him. When I saw you that day, soaking wet but still doing the right thing, I remembered my own past, Raj said. I've been fortunate in business, but I've always known that true wealth isn't about money, it's about character. He pulled out another item from his desk, the leather messenger bag that had started everything. I want you to have this. Ravi's eyes widened. But it's expensive. Its value isn't in its price, Raj replied. It's in what it represents. A turning point. Keep it to remember that sometimes one good decision can change everything. The following Monday morning, Ravi stood in front of the mirror in his new school uniform, hardly recognizing himself. The leather bag was packed with fresh notebooks and textbooks for his first day. Priya had prepared his favorite breakfast, and Raj had rearranged his morning meetings so he could personally drive Ravi to school. As they pulled up to the school gates, Ravi felt a flutter of anxiety. Children in identical uniforms streamed through the entrance, laughing and talking with the easy confidence he never had. What if they ask about my past? He asked quietly. About where I came from. Raj placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Your past is part of your story, not something to hide. But it doesn't define your future. That's yours to write now. Ravi clutched the leather bag tightly as he stepped out of the car. 6 months ago, he'd been fighting for survival on the streets. Today, he was walking into a classroom, keeping the promise he'd made to his mother. I'll pick you up at 3, Raj called as Ravi walked toward the school entrance. With each step, Ravi felt something new growing inside him, not just hope, but confidence. The bag that had changed his life now carried the tools for his future. 1 year had passed since that rainy day when Ravi found the leather bag. The calendar on his bedroom wall now marked the anniversary with a small star, a private reminder of how quickly life could change. The morning sun streamed through his window as Ravi organized his books for school. His room had transformed over the months, shelves filled with novels and textbooks, walls decorated with achievement certificates, and a small desk where he spent hours studying. On the corner of that desk sat the framed photo of his mother, watching over everything. "Ravi, breakfast is ready," Priya called from downstairs. He smiled at the sound of her voice. It had taken months for him to stop being surprised by the daily routines of family life, regular meals, bedtime conversations, weekend outings. The stability that most children took for granted still felt like a miracle to him. In the kitchen, Raj was already seated with the morning newspaper while Priya placed a plate of hot food in front of him. They looked up with warm smiles when Ravi entered. "Ready for your big day?" Raj asked, folding the newspaper. Today was special. Ravi's school had selected him to speak at an event celebrating the opening of a new youth center, a project that Raj's company had funded after he shared Ravi's story with his board of directors. "I think so," Ravi replied, though his stomach fluttered with nerves. "I practiced my speech again this morning." "You'll do wonderfully," Priya assured him, squeezing his shoulder gently. "Just speak from your heart." After breakfast, they drove to the community center located in the same neighborhood where Ravi had once struggled to survive. The contrast between his past and present hit him as they passed familiar corners where he had once searched for recyclables or shelter from the rain. The center was filled with people when they arrived, business leaders, community members, and many children from local shelters. Ravi clutched his speech notes tightly as they walked in, the leather messenger bag, now used as his school bag, hanging from his shoulder. When it was time, Raj introduced him to the audience with obvious pride in his voice. Ravi walked to the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. A year ago, many of these well-dressed people would have walked past him without a second glance. "My name is Ravi," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "A year ago, I was homeless, hungry, and had lost everything except one thing, the values my mother taught me." As he told his story, finding the bag, making the decision to return it, and how that choice had changed his life, he noticed some people wiping away tears. Others nodded in understanding. "But this isn't just my story," he continued. "Every day, we walk past children with the same potential, the same dreams, the same good hearts. They just need a chance." He explained how the new youth center would provide not just shelter and food, but education opportunities, mentorship programs, and job training for all the teens. "Mr. Patel didn't just offer me a home," Ravi said, glancing at Raj and Priya. "He offered me dignity. He saw me not as a charity case, but as a person with something to offer. That's what this center aims to do for every child who walks through its doors." After the speech, many people approached Ravi to shake his hand. Some were business owners offering to support the center's programs. Others were teachers volunteering their time. A few were children currently living in shelters, looking at him with newfound hope in their eyes. Later that evening, back at home, Raj presented Ravi with a gift, a small wooden plaque with words engraved on it. "Character is doing the right thing when nobody's watching." "This was given to me by the man who helped me years ago," Raj explained. "Now it belongs to you." That night, Ravi sat by his window, thinking about how much had changed. He was no longer just surviving, he was thriving. His grades were among the top in his class. He had friends. He had dreams for the future that now seemed possible. The leather bag rested beside his desk, a daily reminder of how one small decision had altered his path completely. But perhaps more importantly, it reminded him that somewhere else, another child was waiting for their chance, their moment when someone would see their true value. As he placed the wooden plaque beside his mother's photograph, Ravi made a silent promise to himself. Someday, when he was older, he would be that person for someone else. The circle would continue, turning a moment of kindness into a lifetime of possibility.